Hi guys, last video this week. This one's all about something that we call the Phillips Curve. Now in the last video we were looking at the business cycle, and what the business cycle showed, there were periods of time in the economy when we'll have really high rates of economic growth, so we operate beyond the trend rate, and there are times when we operate below the trend rate, when we have negative output gaps. Now what we would say is that when we're in a boom, or a positive output gap, the economy is operating beyond the potential output. We were doing that by getting people to work overtime and factories working around the clock to keep a really high demand. What we said was that this would create really high inflation, which is bad. That massive growth in price levels is not good for people. In a negative output gap, the economy is operating below the potential output of the economy. So here we would have really high unemployment, and again that is really bad. So really what we want to do is to avoid both positive and negative output gaps. So boom, what you would have would be really low unemployment, which is good, but we'd have really high inflation. In a recession or a bust or a negative output gap, whatever you want to call it, you can have high unemployment, which could lead to potentially deflation, or at the very least disinflation, which is a drop in the inflation rate. So what you've almost got is a trade-off. A boom, you can have really low unemployment but really high inflation rates. In a negative output gap, you're going to have really low inflation. Maybe it's too low, you've got disinflation or deflation kicking in, but you're going to get really high unemployment. Now, the Phillips curve, it tracks this relationship between the two. So we've got on this axis the inflation rate, so the average rate at which price levels are increasing over time, and then we have the unemployment rate along this axis here. So when you're in a slump, negative output gap, look what you've got. You've got really high rates of unemployment. So unemployment is massive due to low demand for goods and services. And that will lead to low spending, drops in wage rates, people becoming poorer, and that could see a negative inflation rate, so inflation falling below zero. Now what you would then argue though, that when aggregate demand starts to move outwards, maybe the economy moves into recovery, we start to move up the Phillips curve. So as unemployment starts to fall due to high demand, you might start to see some growth in price levels taking place. In a boom, it's the opposite problem. We've got really high inflation rates. Look at that, inflation is huge, it's up here. Now what is causing that high inflation really is super low rates of unemployment. Scarcity of labour is forcing up price levels across the economy. So when aggregate demand starts to fall, when you move into recession, it means that people start to lose their jobs, unemployment starts to grow, but inflation rates start to go down. So if we were operating on the trend rate of economic growth, everyone, would be somewhere like this. So you might have unemployment of, let's say, 4%, and price stability is when inflation operates at 2%. So the logic would be that when aggregate demand grows too much, you start to move up the Phillips curve. High demand will start to see unemployment falling, but it would lead to really high rates of inflation. When you move towards a negative output gap and AD starts to fall, people start to lose their jobs, so unemployment creeps up, and that will see inflation falling. So what this diagram shows everyone is what economic stability means. Stability would mean that we haven't got really high inflation or unemployment. Remember, positive output gap, really high inflation. Negative output gap, really high unemployment. Stability, trend rate, well, hopefully we can be somewhere like that in the middle. There you go guys, Phillips curve, easy peasy. That's the last one this week. Thank you very much.